Welcome to Change It Up Radio with Paula Shaw. I am so excited about the show we have today because we are talking about a major reunion between two men who were best friends in World War II. One is my dad, Jack Gutman, and the other was his best friend, Jerry Ackerman. So do not go anywhere because we are bringing these two guys together today. In fact, you probably see that unlike most times when we start the show, I've got everybody on the screen because these gentlemen are 96 and they mastered the technology to be able to be here on this Zoom screen with me today. And we don't want to mess with a thing. So let me just remind all our listeners that this is Change It Up Radio. I'm Paula Shaw. I am the author of Chakras, the Magnificent Seven. I am also the author of Grief, When Will This Pain Ever End? That is all about helping people move through their grief so they don't get stuck in it. And then one of my favorite little books is this most recent one called Saying the Right Thing When You Don't Know What to Say. And that's all about helping you know what to say and, more importantly, what not to say to people who are in emotional pain. And by the way, you can get a great cheat sheet that gives you lists of things, sentences that are great and helpful to say and those that are not, by going to my website, paulashaw.com. That's paulashaw.com. And if you want to listen to past shows or you want to get the show notes on interesting people like these two gentlemen I have with me today, you can get that information at changeitupradio.com. All right, I can't wait one more second to get into what we have to talk about today. First of all, I have a picture I want to share with you, and this is from, boy, what year? The 40s, right, gentlemen? Somewhere in the 40s. This is the group of Navy men that my dad and Jerry were in with. And let me see, right on this end are what was known as the three J's: Jack, Jerry, and Joe. And they were besties in the Navy. And that's the story we want to tell you about because they got separated when Dad was on his way to the invasion of Okinawa. And for 75 years, they wondered where the other was. They wondered how the other was. And they both went about life, raising their families and doing what people do. And then one day, a phone call came to my dad's home, and there was his old pal Jerry. So, gentlemen, let's give them the backstory now so we can all enjoy this reunion together. Dad, why don't you begin? Because you actually met Jerry after you had already been in the invasion of Normandy, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So, how about if you give us a little backstory, a little brief backstory of what you were doing in the Navy, because you were only 18 years old, and how Normandy was for you. And so we kind of know what led up to meeting Jerry.
Okay. I was 18 years of age. By both Jerry and I, um, both of us are medics. We were called, they called us we had two things. One was hospital apprentice first class or whatever it was. And then when we're called normally by the Marines, it is it's called corpsman.
Hmm.
And and many of us will say corpsman. Well, this is corpsman. And Jerry and I, when I met Jerry after, now, I'm not going to go through all of the things, but when I made the invasion of Normandy, it was just, I'll quickly just say it was hell. I thought it was going to be a cakewalk. Did not turn out to be that way. I was 18 years of age. I I experienced many, many things in it. All of it is in my book, which I wrote called One Veteran's Journey to Heal the Wounds of War. It's on Amazon. There's a
Mm-hmm.
copy of it right there. And it's been there for about 7, 8 years now. And it was on the bestseller list for at least 4 months. But it's got all the data, so I won't go into that. But after I finished with Normandy and went back to my hospital, took care of wounded, I got a leave 30 days. And then I thought I would get hospital duty. Jerry would understand that because they ship you off to stateside duty or something. It all depends with the Navy. But I wound up being sent to Oceanside, California, which was a small town at that time. And they had Camp Pendleton right there, the Marines. And we were called the Beach Battalion. And I met a lot of guys, but two guys I met that really intrigued me. And they were fun because you see, I'd gone through a whole lot with Normandy, and it was something in my mind locked up, and I would not talk about it at all. And I was trying to, and these guys were crazy, Joe and Jerry, and so they were
Dad,
happy guys. And so I got happy, really get happy. And then, of course, with my jokes, and I don't know why Jerry and Joe stayed around me because they must have got tired of my jokes. But anyway, they endured me, and I met two wonderful guys, and we did crazy things like you talk about singing Jewish songs like Hava Nagila and all this stuff. We would do. I don't know. I think it was because we figured maybe this may be our last days. And of course, I
mm-hmm.
well understood that from Normandy because I saw so many die. And Jerry, I had no idea of what his background was then, but all I knew is that I had a great guy that I loved, and Joe Gagliardi. Oh well, Jerry was. See, one thing I didn't like about Jerry is that he was better looking than me. And the girls would look at him all the
That
time.
was better looking than
But
him.
anyway, we bonded together, and it was one of the greatest things I've ever had meeting Jerry. I don't know whatever happened to Joe, but Jerry, we'll talk more about it, but I'll turn it over to you, Paula.
Well, one thing I would like to reiterate though is you met Jerry after you went through a huge, traumatic, terrifying event, seeing carnage all around you on the beach in Normandy, and it was your job to patch those guys up and try and help them. And at
Yes.
18, you had men die in your arms who, you couldn't patch up. And it was a very, very difficult experience that you had been through.
Yes.
So I think it's very interesting that then you met Jerry, who was maybe a kind of an angel for you at the time because you were so torn apart. You needed a way to heal. And then along comes this man that you have so much fun with. And I mean, both you and Jerry talk about the fun times that you had, the silly things you did, and we'll talk more about those. But now, Jerry has done something really wonderful. He's written out a little bit of an introduction for himself to give you a backstory of who he is and about his life. So, Jerry, would you read that to us now? And then we'll talk about the mischief you three J's got into.
Okay, you want me to read the bio?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Jerome Ackerman, and everyone calls me Jerry. I was born on March 16th, 1926. I am 96 years old. I was brought up in the Bronx. My family, consisting of my mother, father, grandfather, and older brother, lived in a two-story walk-up in the East Bronx. I was a kid of the streets, playing everything you could play with a ball: stickball, handball, punchball, stoop ball, basketball, baseball, and football. When I became 17 years old, World War II was raging. I convinced my parents to allow me to join the Navy. They consented, and off I went to boot camp. After boot camp at Sampson, New York, I was transferred to St. Albans Naval Hospital on Long Island. From there, I was transferred to Camp Pendleton in Oceanside, California, and that is where I met Jack Gutman. We became instant buddies as soon as we met. He was the most jovial, fun-loving guy ever, always smiling and always happy. We went on Liberty together and formed a club called the Three J's. Joe Gagliardi became part of our group. We called ourselves the Three J's because the first initial of our first names was a J. Camp Pendleton was an underwater demolition team training base, the forerunners of the Navy SEALs. The Three J's were kept busy tending to their medical needs. We were all eventually reassigned. Jack and I were assigned to the USS Cullman, a troop transport. I don't remember what happened to Joe. I then was assigned to the Cullman Ship's Company, and Jack was transferred to another ship called the Buoy, and that was the end of a beautiful friendship. Fast forward to the present, my son Peter and I were having dinner at a local restaurant. I don't know where it came from, but I started singing an English tune that Jack had taught us. Peter was curious and asked me where Jack lived. Believe it or not, he was able to get him on the telephone. Jack and I talked for a long time and finished by promising to keep in touch. And that's what we've done, right, Jack?
We sure did.
That is such a beautiful story. And before we began our show today, I had the opportunity to speak a little bit with Peter, who told me that he was literally sitting in a restaurant with his dad, picked up his phone, started Googling after his dad mentioned my dad, and within minutes had located my dad and found the phone number and placed the call, much to Jerry's shock and surprise. And before he knew it, he's on the phone with his old friend and can't even believe it. and it was so beautiful because my dad, well, Dad, why don't you tell them what you were going through at the time you received that call?
Well, we had, both my wife and I had, when the COVID hit, we both got COVID, and I had got a couple shots, so I kicked it in a short time. But my wife had pneumonia with hers, and I thought we were going to lose her because things were sad. But we were kept in. We both pulled through, and we were living, locked up all the time. They had these in California. You had to wear a mask. You couldn't go out here. You couldn't go there. And I was in a really low, very despondent mood. And it was not my way normally. And when that call came, and up on my wall where my office and the computer is, I had that picture that you have there. And
of you and Jerry, from the Navy.
Jerry and Joe and I and the rest of our group that was a beach battalion. Yeah, that one. It's up on my wall, and I would just kind of look at that picture many, many times because it was right there. And then when I heard his voice and then Peter this voice said, it said, "Hello, are you Jack Gutman?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Do you know a Jerry Ackerman?" I said, "My God, do I know him? I look at his picture all the time. He's on the wall here." And 75 years had gone by. And I'm going to tell you something. It was like an angel coming to me. And I've had kind of many angels. He was one. And I thought about it. Here's a man, after we talked, that took the time to find me after 75 years. I wondered, I thought he was dead. And Joe, I didn't know anything about him. And it was just, you just picked me right up. It was something I needed so badly. As a matter of fact, it was almost a closure to my post-traumatic stress that I had been going through for 66 years, And I had gone through treatment. My daughter even helped me stop drinking for a while. And then with this therapy with the veterans for almost 3 years. And then you come through with that great caring, compassion. I mean, to hear your son say this and then finally get you on the phone, I just say, "Jerry, I will never ever forget you for picking up my life and making me so happy." I mean it.
It is really
Yeah, I don't mean
wonderful.
to get so emotional. I'm an emotional guy. That's it.
Yeah, and I'm the one who had the Kleenex standing by, and you don't, they're not anywhere near you.
Yeah.
But Jerry, so what was the experience like for you in that first conversation when Peter handed you that phone and there was your old friend?
Uh, I was extremely delighted that he could find Jack for me. And of course, Jack and I were instant buddies as soon as we met because we both spoke New Yorkese and, and we both were probably brought up in the streets, and we had a lot of common things
Mm-hmm.
that we both went through in our younger days. So, and Jack struck me as the happiest guy in the whole world, and I never ever knew what he went through in Normandy because he never spoke about it. And I found out at some point, and I don't remember when, that he never spoke about it because he was told not to by the authorities on
Mm-hmm.
threat of court martial. And so that's why he never spoke about it. And I admired him for that, and just admired what he went through, and we just became instant friends.
That's so beautiful. And last night we were talking about it. One of the things Dad has always done to cope with pain is use humor. So,
Yeah.
of course, he had gone through incredible pain just prior to meeting you with the shocking reality of Normandy. And so part of why he was so happy was because that's how his mind worked. It was like, don't go to the sadness, get into the humor and have fun. And that for him actually was an important part of his healing. So I really believe, Jerry, that you and Joe were an important part of his healing because that relationship allowed him to experience fun again and joy and not get stuck in the depression and the shock of what he had just experienced. So, without knowing it, you really were both incredibly helpful to his healing.
Well, I'm
Paula,
delighted to hear that, Paula. And I'm very happy to know that at least I was a part in helping Jack rehabilitate himself.
Mm.
I'm very happy about that.
Jerry, I want to tell you something that when we got separated after all that training with the Marines and everything else, and the crazy things we did, and the laughter is, the and then of course in losing you. Now I believe with all my heart, I've thought about it and thought about it. With all my heart, I believe that whatever separated us, where you went, wherever you went and did your job for your country, which I salute you for, and and I think God saved you that because I went on the Normandy, not Normandy, Okinawa too. After that,
I know.
and we
And the
lost
ship.
a bunch. We lost a bunch of guys on the buoy, yeah, and we lost a bunch of guys. One of them could have been you on that thing, but whatever is, what I went through, I keep believing God saved you so that you would be here and touch my life 75 years later. And I just have to tell you this because God moves in mysterious ways, and He sure did it with you and your family. And God bless Peter for having the tenacity to keep working at it.
So
Thank you for
Jerry,
that.
I'm kind of curious, Jerry. First of all, how long were you guys there in Oceanside training together before you were deployed? Do you
That was
remember?
months,
No,
wasn't
I don't know the length of time we spent together. I know certain things we did. We were locked up in a. I remember getting locked up in a shack filled with tear gas and without a mask.
Oh
And
my God.
before they would let you out, you had to say your rank, name, rank, and serial number 3 times before they let you out of that.
Yeah,
And
Oh,
I
that was
came
a
out
hell.
tearing up. Did you remember that, Jack?
Yes, when you just thought, I thought about it, all of a sudden I remember, my God, that was terrible. And
That was great.
and you could hardly get it out of your mouth, but that tear gas and that stuff going all over. It was,
oh wow. So you had some tough moments in training.
Yeah, that was
oh,
part of the
listen,
training. Throwing
Jerry,
hand grenades was another part of the training. You remember
Oh,
throwing hand grenades? I,
throwing.
yeah, we had one time where we were in training with the Marines, and we had a lousy master sergeant that could run backwards faster than we could run forward. And he would say, yeah, gentlemen, we got a 50-pound backpack here, and it's got valuable stuff in it, and we don't want to lose it, do we? We say, no, whatever they say, we have to say, yay, or whatever it was. And then he says, so we're going to take it on a 10-mile hike with us. So put it on. I could just hear Jerry with he always had these little remarks there. So, but he says it low so that they don't need the sergeant was something. And training with the Marines was tough.
yeah,
I,
we jumped off. I remember jumping off a 30-foot platform into a pool, 30
yes,
feet.
Wow. Oh,
yes. And
Remember
then,
climbing up and down the netting?
yeah, but we had it. You know what? That was another thing. Thank you, Jerry, for mentioning that. I had forgotten about it because we had to learn to climb down the net. The nets go on the ship, and then they had this net that with like rope nets, and we'd have to come down on it. And when it was like in Normandy, when the water was very rough, it was very tough. And going down that, you found it real tough too, Jerry, didn't you?
What do you
going
think?
down the nets, Jerry, was that a tough one for you?
Oh yeah,
Was that
it was very difficult climbing down that netting.
Yeah,
right?
I'll
It just
bet.
gave way when you put your foot on it, the net just kind of gave way and you kind of lost your balance all the time. It
Hmm.
was very difficult. I don't know how the Marines did.
So,
Hey,
Jerry, I'm curious, when you two were separated, I guess you were put on another ship. Is that what happened?
Jack and I were assigned to the USS Cullman,
Uh huh.
and then I became part of ship's company. They transferred me from a beach battalion to the ship's company, and Jack was still in the beach battalion.
Ah.
And then he was transferred to the USS Bowie or Bowie,
Yeah, Bowie, yeah,
which went on to Okinawa.
yeah.
And I remained on the Cullman until I was transferred off the ship, and the ship continued on to the Marshall Islands, and they were involved in the invasion of Marshall Islands, Anahuac and Kwajalein.
So you know what
But
what occurs to me is in today's world, it's hard to even imagine that you would lose a best friend and have no idea how to reach them, because we all have cell phones, right? And we have we have Facebook, we have all these different ways of finding each other, which Peter eventually used. But back then, you didn't have each other's phone numbers. You weren't able to just text each other and stay in touch when you got separated.
Well, I don't think they had cell phones in those days.
No.
It was a sad day for me when Jack left and I didn't see him anymore. It was a sad day for me.
So I just want you to share one of the stories, Jerry, you told me when you and I had our first conversation, was something about you two dancing down the streets in LA singing songs.
Oh, Jack and I used to dance all the time. We both knew how to do the Lindy Hop. We were from New York, after all. And so we were doing the Lindy Hop all the time.
That's right, yeah.
And
he was a pretty good dancer too.
So were you. You were a great dancer.
Well, we were going to go out and pick up furniture together,
Furniture?
Remember the song you taught us?
He was the investigating guy. You mean the English song?
Do you remember the song you taught us? I've got sixpence. Jolly, sixpence.
Yes.
I've got sixpence.
You remember? My God.
Oh, that is so sweet.
Sixpence to spend and sixpence to lend and sixpence to send home to my wife, poor wife.
Yes.
I was singing that all the way down the streets of Los Angeles in the middle of the night.
Oh my goodness.
After spending a couple of hours at a bar.
I'll bet you two were a party handful.
Then I don't know, at that time, did we sing that one about Roll Me Over in the Clover? That was an English song, the two. We used to use that a lot and all. I know that in Europe. There was so many things that we the three of us were pretty daring, because we were 19 years of age, young people, and maybe it would be our last days. We had no idea what it was going to be. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, we were gone, So we did lots of crazy things, but we enjoyed it. And to me, it was a great break, because I was with two guys, and after going through the hell in Normandy and all of that, and these flashbacks were coming. And then, of course, Jerry would understand what I'm saying, that in my training, I don't know, maybe he went through it too. I was in a psychiatric ward as a corpsman, or taking care of the patients for a couple of weeks. And what I saw there scared me. And that's why one of the things why I would never tell anyone anything, even when I came out of the war, was if I tell them my flashbacks of what I'm going through, because everything was magnified, it was just horrible. And I did crazy things. I figured they would put me in a mental institution. So I just kept it quiet. And then to be amongst guys like Jerry and Joe, they just kind of picked me up. And so I guess I reciprocated with my own brand of humor and everything else like that. And I thank it. And I thank God every single day that we had that time together.
So,
I have
Jerry,
to tell you a little bit about Joe Gagliardi.
yeah.
Joe Gagliardi was a weightlifter, and he was a very extremely muscular guy.
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
And he carried those weights around with him wherever he went. I don't know how the heck he did it. We offered to help him carry the weights. He said, no, no, I'll do it myself. And he carried his weights and his gear, and wherever he went, they went with him.
See, he was
Wow.
crazy. He was crazy too, you
He
see
was a
that.
wacko.
He was a
Carrying those
wacko.
weights around, you had to be some kind of a wacko.
He was just ahead of his time. Today,
Yeah.
lots of guys are into fitness like that, right? But back then, not so much. So I know, Jerry, that after the war and after service, my dad went back to New York and met my mother and got married and started their family. Did you also go back to New York?
Yes, we. I went back to New York and enrolled in the University of Miami.
Ah,
I went to college in Miami University and graduated with a BBA degree, Bachelor of Business Administration.
oh, very good.
My father, when I was very young and when I was a kid, was a mechanic, an automobile mechanic,
Hmm.
and he was in business with his two brothers. They were all mechanics, and they worked on taxi cabs in New York City mostly.
Ah, uh-huh.
And during the Depression, the taxi drivers couldn't pay their bills, so they gave the taxi cabs with the medallions that went with it, the license,
Hmm.
and gave them to my father and his brothers in payment of their bills.
Oh my
We wound up
gosh.
with about 10 or 15 taxi cab medallions that way. And that started him in the taxi cab business.
Wow.
And then later on, we just added on to the fleet and became fleet owners in New York,
Oh my
taxi cab fleet
goodness.
owners. And but I have to tell you a story about how the taxi cabs became yellow in New York State, in New York
Oh,
City.
I'd love to hear that.
Mayor Lindsay at the time was mayor, and the taxi cabs were painted all colors of the rainbow at the whim of the fleet owner. Whatever his favorite color was, that's what he painted the taxi cab. So you had reds, blues, orange, greens, whatever. And Mayor Lindsay was tired of that, and he wanted a standard color. So he called up the Metropolitan Taxi Cab Board of Trade, which was a trade organization that the fleet owners belonged to, and told them that he wanted a standard color in New York City and let them choose the color. So the Metropolitan Taxi Cab Board of Trade selected a committee of which I was chairman,
Oh,
with the task of finding a color, standard color in New York. So we met, and I said to the people on the committee that I think yellow would be a good color because most of the taxi cabs in the United States are yellow. And since New York City is such a big tourist city, it would
ah,
be nice if the people saw a yellow taxi cab and would recognize it as a taxi cab. I think it
yes.
would be recognizable by the tourists that come visit. The committee agreed, and we adopted the yellow color, submitted it to the board submitted it to the mayor. The mayor approved it and signed it into law. That's how taxi cabs in New York
Wow.
became
It was
yellow.
Wow.
all because of you, Jerry. That's
Yes,
very exciting. Wow.
Great. I salute you.
thank you.
Well,
It was fun
gentlemen,
doing it.
I could do spend hours doing this, but I before we run out of time, I would like both of you to just sum up what happened. Is I think it's rather interesting, by the way, that you both went back to New York but didn't know how to find each other. Then Jerry went to school in Miami, but eventually came back to New York. By then, Dad had left, probably, come to California. And then, as they say, the rest is history. You didn't know how to find each other. But Jerry, if you could tell us, sum up what happened in your life. Did you marry? Did you have children? Tell us about that.
Come here. She she's reluctant to go on TV.
No,
Come on, go on here.
Obviously, it
do it.
sounds like there's a woman in the background. You must have gotten married.
It's my lovely wife. She's been my wife for 75 years.
Oh my
And-
goodness, my parents too.
Is that
Yeah,
a
we're
75
we're
years?
both married the same time.
Would come up June
And,
22nd.
What was I gonna say?
how we met.
Oh, that's a very interesting story if you'd like to hear it.
I would love to hear it.
There's a resort in the Catskill Mountains called Grossinger's. I
Mhm.
don't know if you ever
Okay.
heard of it. Anyway,
Oh,
we were both there at the time, and it was on a skating rink. We were both skating, and I saw her, and as soon as I saw her, I just went bonkers. You know, I said, I have never seen a more beautiful girl in all of my life.
Oh my
That
goodness.
I have to get to know her. So I skated over to her, and we started to talk and blah, blah, blah. And I said, you know, you are so beautiful. One of these days I'm going to marry you.
Oh my, on the first day you met her, you said that?
So yeah, and she got angry. And
Probably thought you were
pushed me away,
crazy.
and she ignored me the rest of the day. The next morning, I see her at breakfast, and she's wearing this beautiful turtleneck sweater, and just her beautiful face is showing. And I said, "Oh my God, I got hit with a lightning bolt,
Oh,
just like
the
this guy
Godfather.
in The Godfather when he saw his lady girlfriend."
Yes.
So he got hit, and I got hit with a lightning bolt.
Ah.
So I went over to her and I said, you know, do you have anything? Are you doing anything this evening? They're having a dance tonight. She said, no. I said, well, I have, would you like to go to the dance? And she said, yeah. And I said, okay, my friend needs a date. So she agreed anyway. She agreed, and I made sure that she sat next to me, so I could be near her and we could dance together.
For the
And,
rest of your lives.
eventually, my prophecy came true. We did
Yeah.
marry. We had children. How many grandchildren do we have? 5 grandchildren. How many
Mm.
great grandchildren? 5 children, grandchildren, and 5 great grandchildren.
Oh my goodness. And how many children did you two have?
3. We had 3.
3 children. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
Two girls and a boy.
So
Yeah.
this is really fun because my dad met my mom after the war as well. And it was pretty much like that, Dad. Didn't you say you met her in at night school?
Yes.
And you were pretty struck with her with the first time you saw her?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it was an algebra class. We were both taking preparatory subjects to go to college. And so I sat in the front and she was in the back. And it turned out she was the smartest gal in the algebra class. And so the teacher would have her do things. But so it turned out I used to tell jokes in the front with the guys there. And I had a guy sitting next to me. Apparently, after about 3 or 4 weeks, he quit. Maybe it was my jokes, I don't know. But anyway, it turned out there was a seat empty. And she comes down and says, could I sit here? Because I think I can hear better. And so I figured she's the smartest gal in the class. I could copy off of her if she, if something goes wrong. Well, it turned out even I said, help yourself. and it was great. So we got to know each other, and I found out she's very ethical because she was in charge of the class because the teacher left for a while, and we were taking a test. And I said to her, "If X is so and so, what is this?" And she goes, "Figure it out." So I had a woman with integrity, and she was beautiful. It's a Latin gal, very pretty, and so I was very lucky. So we traveled on the same free subway as we lived 4 blocks away from each other, and that's how it all happened. And eventually, uh, we ran off and got married, and our folks were not too happy about it.
On
They
my
all,
mother's birthday, Jerry, on her 18th birthday, they eloped
Oh, wow, that's
and
great.
surprised, yeah, and didn't tell anybody right away because they
yeah,
were afraid their parents would be upset with them. So it was a crazy story, but they also went on to have 3 children. I have a sister and a brother, Leslie and Craig. And my brother, I had 2 children, no grandchildren yet. My brother has 3 children, and they have 2 grandchildren. So, but I think it's really interesting that you two were kindred souls. You both met the love of your life and have been married to her ever since. And we all
Yeah,
know how rare that is in
a lot
today's
of
world.
things we are
So
parallel with the two
yeah.
of us.
I know it's really beautiful.
Isn't it interesting that both Jerry and I, both were going to be, Joe and I will be celebrating our 75th anniversary June 22nd, and he's got 75 years in also.
Hmm.
Jerry,
Amazing.
we God has been good to both of us.
Yes.
We're
God
two
is,
And
peas in
I
a
am
pod.
so happy that we got a chance to that you found me, and I thank Peter and your whole family, and just wonderful Barbara for working out all the details and so forth. But we'll all be looking forward to seeing each other in on the 20 in June.
in
So
June. And boy, I'm telling you,
keep
I'm
you in prayer,
blocking
my
out the
friend.
whole day because I can't wait to hang out with the two of you and take you back to Oceanside. Your mouth is
Oh,
going to be
yeah.
hanging open the whole time. It's just
Yeah,
nothing
we're
like when
looking
you two were
forward to
here for
that.
sure.
Oh, you won't
I'm
believe
trying to
it.
convince Barbara to spend more time there than one day, and
Yes, I
I'm
think you
working on it.
should. Work on it, Jerry. Barbara,
I'm working
come
hard.
on, Barbara. Well, gentlemen, I hate to bring this to a close, but we are out of time. But it has been beyond what I ever dreamed it was going to be to get the two of you together on my show today. And I thank you both for being willing. I thank you both for all of the beautiful heart and the beautiful memories that you shared. And I think you've given my listeners something really special in this show today. So bless both of you. Bless both of you.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you very much for the opportunity to do this show.
Thank you for saying yes, Jerry.
And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Jerry, so good to just see you.
Hey,
It's
Joe. Hey,
it's been a treasure in my life, believe me,
Jack,
highlight of
I'm
my life.
saving a great big hug for you when I see you.
Okay, we'll both hug each other. God bless you.
God
All
And
bless you.
right.
Barbara and
I
Peter,
just want to
you're
say hello.
welcome.
I haven't
Get
been
your
on.
face in
There
there.
you
There
are.
she
Hello,
is.
There you
Barbara.
There's
are.
my beautiful bride.
I didn't
Oh,
want to interfere with this whole wonderful, wonderful story,
oh, well,
Well,
I
I've
think
thank
heard,
you.
but
I'm so delighted that you came on camera because I wanted to see this beautiful girl that
oh,
swept him
well,
off
Yeah.
his
that
feet.
By
was,
the
he's
way,
talking about 75 years ago. No,
You
Oh,
know, Barbara,
uh,
if I had my mother come on, it's amazing to me. You two remind me of each other, and she too still has beautiful skin. I mean, no
yeah,
one would guess you're in your 90s. You look fabulous.
thank
I,
you.
You two
I,
both.
I,
You
I
are,
can see,
you
I can
are a
see,
you're a
beautiful girl.
beautiful lady.
I can
Oh,
see
Paulette,
what
you're
Jerry
a
thank
was
you.
talking
beautiful,
about.
Thank
beautiful
you.
girl.
Yeah, she's a beautiful woman. The way he
Beautiful woman.
described her, I can just visualize. I see it right now. So, Jerry, you lucked out, man. You did.
I
And
think
and
we're
and
all
and I
lucky
I
and
was
all
very,
blessed.
very lucky myself.
Yes, you
married,
were.
I think we both married. God set it up and gave us great women to take care of us. I thank him and I
Thank you.
thank all of you.
And
It's
I
been such
thank
a
all of
wonderful
you.
pleasure. Paula, thank you for working this whole thing out for us.
You are very welcome. And thank you all. Barbara and Jerry, thanks
All
for
right.
being with
Paula,
us.
Thank you, Paula.
God bless you,
that was
Barbara.
wonderful of you, Paula,
Oh,
really. And
thank you,
we
dear.
are looking forward to meeting you when we come to California.
I know. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Listen, whatever time we have together, we're going to enjoy it.
That's
And
right.
it'll be a treasured time, believe me.
Yes, it will.
And then I hope it'll be maybe another time we can get together again. So we'll work it
Yes,
out.
I think this should just be the beginning. And I'm
Yeah.
afraid
Yes.
I'm going to have to end us, guys. So thank you to my listeners. Remember, you can hear us on
Bye-bye
every
now.
major podcast platform and, of course, on iHeartRadio and Podopolo, the best podcast platform out there. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye
God bless you.
bye.
Bye-bye, Jack.